which makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publishers. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org.
Trisha Mary, and for the next hour, I will be reading from the Saturday, Sunday, April 18th, 19th issue of Off Duty from the Wall Street Journal on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. From the front page of Off Duty, America is hooked on Mahjong. I tried to find out why. A month chasing the all consuming, sometimes controversial boom from Chinatown's chicken hands to a 5-star Connecticut retreat. This is by Jamie Waters. In a sultry basement bar on a Wednesday night in downtown Manhattan, some serious trash talking was going on. "No pity, bitches," says the attorney and former prosecutor Frances Impalazzo to her 3 Mahjong companions. They had allowed her to take a tile after another player had already grabbed it. Technically a no-no, but Frances, 55 and wearing pearls as big as martini olives, was having none of it. "If I win it, it's because I win, not because you're being nice to me." After winning with a fairly low scoring hand, Francis asked Tiffany, 26, a technology consultant whose grandmother is a Mahjong shark, what would your grandma call that play? "Not enough points," quipped Lily Ling, 40, a Broadway musician. The shuffling clatter of domino-shaped ceramic tiles drowned out the women's laughter. I was at Mahjong Palace, a stylish Mahjong social club with a monthly residency at Macau Trading Company, a Tribeca restaurant and bar. Men and women from their 20s to their 70s slurp Hakka noodles and sip Pinot Grigio. The club was formed in 2024 by Kim, 40, a Singaporean who worked in the art world. As a Mahjong newbie, I was there to observe seasoned players. At a central table, Lois was schooling folks half her age. "My favorite thing about Mahjong is meeting people," says the 60 something ceramist, "and I like winning." Developed in China in the 1800s, played in groups of 4 and long associated with retirees, Mahjong involves forming tiles into sets across a handful of suits. Although that's like saying playing concert piano involves poking keys. In 1923, soon after the game was popularized in the U.S. by a businessman, the New York Times declared it a new bridge. Last month on the podcast Pivot, co-hoster Kara called it the new pickleball, borrowing the line from her friend Brooke, a communication advisor. "It's a thing now," says Clara. "It's interesting, it's challenging, it's a of a game. There are dozens of different versions, most of them popularized in Asia. In the US, 2 dominate: Hong Kong Mahjong and American Mahjong. Hong Kong Mahjong uses 144 tiles. American Mahjong, nationalized by Jewish women, adds 8 jokers, an elaborate tile trading process called the Charleston, and a dizzying card that changes annually and lists 70 odd winning lines, which can produce more than 1,000 combinations. There are different games," says Jamie Dalton, 40. She learned the Hong Kong version to connect with her Chinese grandmother and is co-founder of the Gold Coast Mahjong Club, an American club in Darien, Connecticut. Americans' new social obsession, Mahjong became younger, cooler, trendier, and bigger post pandemic. though not without debate over commercialization and cultural appropriation. Tiles are flying around brownstones, sororities, warehouses, corporate offsites, and country clubs from Chicago to Miami to Dallas. Marjan is an addiction. I tell you, an addiction, says Liz Bush, 42, from Greenwich, Connecticut, who's an instructor who booked out for the next 6 weeks. In the 2026 hellscapes of sports betting and doom scrolling, however, it's the rare, wholesome one. It shuns phones, keeps the mind sharp, and gives Grandma a prime opportunity to thump with the young'uns. Young Asian Americans are forming mahjong clubs to embrace their roots. I hate to use this word because it's kind of ew, but mahjong is a social lubricant, says Joanna, 28, co founder of the Green Tile Social Club, a New York pop up club. You sit down with three other people and you have to look everyone eye to eye. According to Eventbrite, Mahjong events increased nearly 200% from 2023 to 2024. On Yelp, US based searches for Mahjong clubs rose by 4,467% from September 2024 to August 2025 compared to the previous 12 months. Searches for Mahjong lessons were up more than ninefold. Everyone who's anyone is playing, from Blake Lively to Meghan, Duchess of Sussex, who has a Maj squad. The game is also minting in its own celebrities and fueling dramas that could pass for TV reality plot lines. In one viral TikTok video, members of a senior living community accused their ex friend of foul play, taking tiles out of turn and refusing to reveal her winning hands. We're done with her, a funny says in the clip, which has been viewed 2.2 million times. To understand the boom, I embarked on a month-long mahjong adventure. I spent more than 12 hours learning, visiting New York clubs, in a mahjong retreat in Connecticut that was exactly as boogie as it sounds. Chicken in Chinatown. To learn Hong Kong Mahjong, I visited a warmly lit community space in Chinatown one Tuesday night. Zoo's Green Tile Social Club, co founded by her and three Asian American friends, was hosting a beginners event. We played Chicken Hands, a beginner friendly version of the advanced point based game. After 45 to 90 minutes, you can graduate to scoring hands, says Vicky Yang, 39, our instructor. Others say longer. Sure, it was only chicken, but I quickly got a little too into it. I couldn't stop winning. I took 4 rounds in a row, which my table of total novices agreed must be some kind of record. As I fended off allegations of greatness, Yang deadpanned, chicken is 75% luck. The tile gods were on your side. Yang, twinkle in her eye, kept us on our toes. You would love that tile, but you can't take it, she said when I excitedly, unwittingly grabbed the bamboo tile out of turn. They would love me at the senior living community. I asked Alice Ho, a table mate, why she's learning Mahjong. Growing up as an Asian American in the South, for a long time I wasn't proud of my heritage, says the 24-year-old Texan, a project manager at a bank. As an adult, I'm really leaning into it, being proud to be Chinese. Green tile events usually value preserving the authenticity of the game itself, Zhu says, but they are modernizing their relationship to the game by combining it with other activities popular among Asian Americans, such as indoor climbing. Now that I had a bit of a handle on it, I wanted to get a sense for what Zoo called the true underground scene. A few weeks later, Green Tile would host its regular after hours event at a Brooklyn warehouse. I booked my ticket. The Connecticut retreat. The first thing I was told about American Mahjong is not to drink while learning. Advice I heard on day one of a 3 day, roughly $2,500 affair hosted by the Gold Coast Mahjong Club at the Mayflower Inn and Spa. 49 women and 3 men gathered at the five-star hotel in rural Connecticut. I attended games but didn't stay the night. At 9 a.m. the next morning, Debbie August, a 71-year-old Jewish woman from Naples, Florida, seated beside me at the mahjong table, ordered a round of mimosas. I think if you have a drink when you're learning, you're less uptight, said August. She has been playing for 38 years. While I tried to swap my champagne fizzy brain around the symbol packed card and enough etiquette rules to stun a Swiss butler, August chatted away. Next thing, we were applying gold rejuvenation patches. These were to soften under our under eyes, the only bags at the retreat without Chanel branding. Mahjong is like therapy, said August. It has been that and more for Dalton, who co founded Gold Coast last year. After moving to Darien, Connecticut, the introverted Dalton struggled to make friends until she started playing. My opinion of the town completely changed, she said. Choking up, she added, I told my mom, I think this is the universe sending me what I needed to feel like I'm part of this community. After 3 2-hour sessions, my brain was spinning, and I felt like I had only grasped about 30% of the game. When I told one leisure clad woman that it would be easier to read Morse code than the card, she counseled patience. Mahjong is like Pilates, she said. It doesn't get easier, but your form gets better. Tiles, boogie dice, and controversy. Ask people for a recent Mahjong cultural reference, and chances are they'll cite 2018's Crazy Rich Americans, the blockbuster that shone a chandelier on Singapore's 0.1%. In a pivotal scene, the matriarch, Eleanor Young, faces off against her son's girlfriend, Rachel Chu. Despite the high society reference, Mahjong isn't inherently exclusive. There's a low barrier to entry, says Emily Brown, 40, the other co owner of Gold Coast. Apart from tiles, which can cost $60 and maybe a mat, you really don't need anything else, says Brown. Some women at the retreat would politely argue that. Actually, you do need the scallop tortoiseshell racks, the 4,100 center and spring table with a well for a champagne ice bucket, and the so called $25 boogie dice that felt like smooth river pebbles. I felt bad buying an expensive set until I looked up how much a golf club costs, says Claire Mohammed, 36, who works for Gold Coast, curates Mahjong tablescapes, and wouldn't be the last woman to invoke the price of her husband's putters as ammunition. A cluster of U.S. brands has capitalized on Mahjong's new popularity, releasing pricey sets that critics say treat the game less as tradition than commercial fashion trend. White-owned Dallas brands, the Mahjong line and Oh My Mahjong, have been accused of cultural appropriation for $300 plus tile sets that critics say swap out traditional Chinese symbols for Western ones. We unabashedly use our creativity and innovation, says Kate Laguerre, co founder of the Mahjong line. We have a tremendous amount of respect for the community of people who passionately play the game, she added. Megan Trotter, founder of Oh My Mahjong, which has a line of 30 sets, says the majority, 99.9%, are based in Chinese imagery. Among players, opinions seem more mixed than the online backlash suggests. Brands overcharging for sets and riding the hype wave. That's not ideal, says Lowe, the technological consultant. Growing up in New Jersey, Lowe didn't know anyone outside her family who played Mahjong. So for me, the growth of the game and getting people excited outweighs the negatives. Stowe said that within her circles, typically the sentiment is there's no beef on our side. Every variation of Mahjong has its own culture around it. I think to each their own, she said. I think what has caused tension is just the feeling of wanting to see the game treated with dignity. For us, Mahjong is not a trend, it's part of our culture. Some oppose symbol switch ups for practical reasons. Kamanse, who runs the Mahjong Palace, said there's a neuro connection element to Mahjong, and if you're taking 3 seconds to decipher this new Hello Kitty holding something on the tile, that's precious time lost. The new nightlife. It was time for After Hours, Green Tile's Friday night event. I last frequented a warehouse near Brooklyn's Bushwick neighborhood for a leather themed rave. This time the outfits were cool and more presentable. Loose jeans, backward caps. Beats hummed, lights glimmered, and about 20 young men and women traded emerald green tiles. A Suchu cocktail was included with the $25 entry fee. People rotated between tables every 2 rounds. It was lively, almost giving off speed dating vibes. Most folks I encountered grew up playing an Asian version and flicked the tiles with inevitable ease. One guy, a 30 something Singaporean investment banker, said if I had any spaces in my tile lineup, my luck would escape. I looked down at my wall, gappier than British teeth, and slammed it together. When Green Tile's co founder, Ernest Chan, 29, announced that we had only 20 minutes left, I thought he was joking. The time had whizzed by. And when the guy beside me whipped out his phone to snap his winning hand, I realized it was the first time in nearly 3 hours I had seen that hideous blue glow or thought about anything other than this bewitching game. One more round, I asked. You are listening to the reading of articles and features from Off Duty from the Wall Street Journal on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. This is from the Rumble Seat by Dan Neal, a four-door, four-seat weekenders Ferrari. Yes, it's a thing. The very idea of a Ferrari SUV struck some as absurd, but only Maranello decides what is and what isn't a Ferrari. And again, this is by Dan Neal. When Ferrari revealed the Purgose 3 years ago, many in the Red Brigade decided didn't like the design and more generally the very idea of a Ferrari sport utility vehicle, scoring it at a sort of scoring it as sort of heresy. It's not a real Ferrari. I marveled at the presumption. Most of all, Maranello's bankers are the ones who decide what is and what isn't a Ferrari. For years, clients quietly petitioned for a four-door, four-seat model with cargo space to accommodate skis and luggage, higher ground clearance to get up snowy mountain roads, and a suspension dampening ride control, and cabin isolation suitable for driving long distance, a weekender's Ferrari. Another underserved market was the livery trade. In Asian markets, it's not unusual for the wealthy to be driven rather than to drive. For Ferrari, the only sin is leaving money on the table, and so the Peroxan. But it didn't have to be so awesome. It could have come to life as a lesser kind of Ferrari, a diminished derivative of one of the company's mainline GT cars with a turbocharged V8 under the hood. Instead, deep beneath the swells of aluminum and carbon fiber is the full sen, the real deal. Naturally aspired, dry, sumped lubricant 6.5-liter V12 with maximum power and torque coming at high RPMs. The free-breathing V12 is quite a sky rider. More relaxed moments at highway speeds. In eighth gear, the V12 is barely turning 1,000 RPMs. But paddle shift down to third gear and step on the gas. Watch as the graphically animated tachometer needle fans through a couple of full power up shifts. Observe the terrifying velocity of passing scenery. Hearken the V8 warble wail at red line, sawing bourgeois decadence in half like a musician's assistant. Owners will pay for the privilege, of course. Ferrari's production of V12 engines is limited. The car so blessed is especially pricey. While it's a bit apples and oranges, you can compare the Ferrari Amalfi Coupe with the 12 Cylindre. The difference shakes out to about $125,000 upsell for the V12, and that's ignoring the considerable collectible value. In interest of maintaining brand mystique, Ferrari limits Pergose to 20% of its overall productions, lest it suffer the fate of Porsche, which now sells many more SUVs than its legendary sports car. Nor can the average ultra high net worth individual just stroll into a dealership and scratch a check. Ferrari is in the inevitable position of allotting Pergose sales to its well regarded clients, collectors, and other friends of Ernesto. As for amateur gainsaying the work of the Cilantro style design department, I think that's adorable. 3 years on, the Pergose remains an astonishing presence on any street, a provocation, an outrage, a moral panic. Indeed, sire, very like any Ferrari. While you're marveling, consider that even with the V12 in front, the Pergose's weight distribution is nearly ideal, with just over half, 51% of the curb weight on the enormous rear Pirelli 3050-30s R23s. In order to achieve this statuary ratio, the engineers located the 8-speed dual clutch transmission at the rear axle. The rear mounted transaxle works cooperatively with a front mounted 2-speed gear set being driven off the engine, supplying all-wheel tractions as necessary under speeds of about 125 miles an hour. It was not easy to pour this car into a voluptuous-shaped bottle. In fact, the Vertuer V12 comes with a number of downsides compared with the twin-turbo V8. The V12 really puts away the petrol. The EPA fuel economy figure of 12 miles per gallon combined hilariously overstates mileage in my real world driving. Admittedly, that includes a few hour lunches. The Pergose's wheels and tires, glorious in their audacity, are required are also require some sophisticated workarounds. These include the exotic 48V fully active suspension system, which Ferrari says at the time was the first in production. With the instantaneously of hydraulic power, the independent suspension puts real muscle into the car's ride quality, chassis control, and stability systems, provided you can ever get it near its limit to tell. With all this machinery taking up space, The challenge becomes finding room for passengers and ways for them to get in and out. The solution: the Pergos's Ubo characteristic rear coach doors, all but hidden in the coupe-like profile. The rear hinge door swings open almost 80 degrees. Getting in and out of the rear cabin is effortless, whereas with its low-slung siblings, the struggle is real. Also, unlike those I sampled from Rolls-Royce, the Pergos's coach doors are relatively compact. At least they don't reach out to clobber nearby cars. The rear cabin matches the front in molded leather magnificence, with two deep-seated, high-bolstered rear chairs cozied up between the wheel wells, sharing an armrest. The rear seats fit close and hold tight, keeping to helping to keep passengers from moving about the cabin during turbulence. I note that the rear seats also have ISOFIX attachment point for a child safety seat. But before you go hustling this $500,000 bison through the cones at the school drop off, be sure to warm up the tires. An indicator on the dash will let you know when they reach operating temperatures. Ferrari is trying to give the people what they want, maybe too hard. Conspicuous in its absence in the center position of the dash is the LCD touchscreen. Instead, where the rolling leather landscapes forms a valley, a black mirror disc holds pride of the place. This touch capacity device, mainly for climate, comfort, and seat controls, is elegant, often inscrutable. The personalization menus you typically expect to find on a center touchscreen are instead baked into the driver's instrument display. To drill through the selections for entertainment, navigation, comms, or connectivity, drivers use a 4-point controller on the steering wheel. I predict a sudden wave of nostalgia for touchscreens. The angry button is right where it usually is, the lower right of the steering wheel. The metallic spring-loaded Mantinino selector engaged one of the 5 drive modes, including sport mode and electronic stability control off. Stop-start cycling is active in all drive modes. To disengage, drivers have to press a button to the lower left of the steering wheel, an act of conscious hyperconsumption. Toggling up to sport mode engages the sport mode exhaust. The vocalizations get thicker, boomier, but not appreciably louder from the outside, as far as I can tell. The latest European noise pollution standards are another tightrope Ferrari must walk between giving clients what they want and what they can have. The Ferrari Pergose. The price is $393,350. The price that was the base price, and the price that was tested on this car is $576,544, and it weighs 4,482 pounds, and it goes 0 to 62 miles per hour in 3.3 seconds. The fuel economy is 11, 15, and 12. Enjoy, enjoy dreaming. This is from the music page. Ella Langley breaks through to country superstardom. The chosen Texas singer has a new album, Dandelion, and this is by Elias Light. They're called Ella Fellas. Brawny and bearded, often wearing baseball hats, they film their feeble attempts to resist the latest hits from the country singer Ella Langley. The joke is that by the time the chorus arrives, the boys are invariably belting out every word, unable to conceal their fandom for another moment. Evan Fox, a 26-year-old Ella fella, has posted several videos about Langley's music from the fire station where he works as a firefighter and paramedic. He was recently playing pool at a bar when her song Dandelion came on. I had to stop my game to sing along, he said. I am very proud to call myself a Ella fella, added Craig Boomers, Chief Marketing Officer for American Eagle, which partnered with the singer on an ad campaign this year. Country music is ascending, and Langley, whose second album, Dandelion, came out Friday, is the newest superstar. Several of her hits have vintage charm. They wouldn't sound out of place in a honky tonk in the 1980s. The Hope Hall, Alabama native can also talk about her deer hunting adventures in grisly detail. At the same time, Langley, 26, has managed to hook a wider audience who don't see deer and think about dinner. Joy Beth Taylor, who has co written several of the singer's hits, said it is unusual to please both constituents, that they set her apart, she says. Langley's single, Choosin', Texas, which drips with pedal steel guitar and references the country legend George Strait, has spent multiple weeks as the most popular song in the U.S., two stepping past hits from Bruno Mars and Harry Styles. Songs like these are few and far between. Since 2000, just a dozen women or female groups have launched a country single into the top 100, according to Billboard. With Choosing Texas, Langley joins an elite club that includes Faith Hill, The Chicks, Carrie Underwood, and Taylor Swift. Langley has said she never wanted to be anything other than a singer. In Hope Hall, she grew up digging into Hank Williams and Merle Haggard's, along with Pearl Jam and Mode. One of her dogs is named Crew, as in Motley Crue. She will name drop the 2000 rock band Nickelback in one interview and country stalwart Ronnie Mishap in the next. I sang everywhere all the time, she said. The Bobby Bones Show, which is recorded in Nashville, Tennessee, and beamed out by radio stations around the country. I had a cousin that worked at the dentist that made me get up and sing after my appointments. She formed a bar band at Auburn University and studied forestry. More excited about shows than shrubs, Langley dropped out and moved to Nashville in the summer of 2019. She declined to be interviewed for this piece. Taylor, the songwriter, met Langley through a roommate near the start of the pandemic. We didn't have deals at the time. We were just figuring it out, Taylor recalled. We started writing songs together super quick. And when things opened back up after COVID, we would write whatever that would write with us. Langley was always so different from everybody else, Taylor continued. Her work ethic was just better than anybody's. During a recent conversation with the country singer Joe D. Messina, Langley said that she sees herself as goofy and weird. But Bones remembered that, even as a newcomer, she projected so much confidence. It was like she belonged immediately, he said. The first time the country star Miranda Lambert joined Langley for a songwriting session, she brought in an entire vision board for her album. Lambert said in an email, she knew that it was going to be called Dandelion, and she already knew how she wanted it to come together visually. Langley sprinkled songs across 2022 and released an EP in 2023, but didn't kick open the door until the following year when she previewed a tipsy romp titled You Look Like You Love Me on TikTok. A duet with the singer Riley Green, it sounded as retro as a dusty jukebox. But its forthright approach to romance was thoroughly contemporary. The song offers women a jokey how to manual for taking home a stranger from a bar. In a TikTok video that earned more than 1 million likes, Langley pushed "You Look Like You Love Me" as the pickup line of the summer. The track went on to win the trophy for top single at both the Academy of Country Music Awards and the Country Music Association Awards. Many of Langley's most effective tracks delve into love's ugly aftermath. They are sobering, if rather sober. In Paint the Town Blue, she's post heartbreak, boozing herself into oblivion as the brass chugs along beneath her. In Weren't for the Wind, her second top 40 hit, she's addicted to leaving, trampling promises underfoot in her haste to hit the road. Then there's Choosing Texas, which sounds surprisingly cheery. Bright guitars, finely buffeted harmonies, considering it's about losing a lover to a rival. It's super catchy, Bone says. It's got a great concept. It's written with Miranda. It's got like 11 things that worked for it. It's cool to see it working within country music and also crossing over like crazy. The dizzying speed of Langley's rise has taken a toll. In August, she posted on Instagram that she was more run down than ever and needed time off to rest. Last month, she told Messina she was plagued with self doubt after picking up multiple nominations at the Academy of Country Music Awards. Some of these feelings seep into the music on Dandelion. While I'm living the dream, all I'm dreaming about is slowing down just a little. She sings on Simple Something. But at the same time, she keeps releasing hits. Her new album also makes room for the wistful soft rock of Be Her, which immediately became Langley's second biggest song to date. In March, she performed at the Country Radio Seminar, an annual event in Nashville that brings together program directors and other music business bigwigs. It's pretty insane to watch a room full of industry people rush the stage, says Emily Cohen Balo, the global head of country programming at Amazon Music, who was in the crowd. I had some co-workers who were like, "We're Ella fellows. We've got to go." On the off-duty travel page, at 100 Colonial Williamsburg is the show to see this summer. Too often discounted as the domain of school children, Colonial Williamsburg can actually be a fascinating study in how to bring the distant past to life, one committed performance at a time. And this is by Kinsley Gidrick. On a brisk December morning in Colonial Williamsburg, a man dressed as Thomas Jefferson swept past historic homes towards a crowd of eager onlookers. His wool coat trailed behind him, and his auburn hair was set into four exacting curls beneath a tricorn hat. The effect was unmistakably leading man, the Leonardo DiCaprio of Duke of Gloucester Street. Starting in January, the world's largest living history museum will celebrate its 100th anniversary, and Kirk Smith would hit 10 years interpreting Thomas Jefferson, a major role at the Virginia Museum. As one of the site's national builders, first person interpreters portraying figures of revolutionary America, Smith regularly fields autograph requests and accepts gifts, a custom mug tiled with his own face, a vinyl album of original Jefferson ballads. The devotion is well earned. Smith can quote Jefferson verbatim and cite Seneca and Enlightenment philosophers without blinking. It's like if Hollywood were 300 acres and didn't extend beyond history nerds, Smith says. For many, the colonial Williamsburg experience begins and ends with a school field trip. While history buffs may revel in the costumes and architecture, it all can feel little too earnest to some. But over my 3 decades of visits, starting at a 13-year-old kid from Washington State, I've found much to love, and on every visit, some new kernel of history to obsess over. The, his, the museum's evolution is the subject of Colonial Williamsburg, the first 100 years, on view through 2029. I visited the exhibit and found a fascinating deep dive not into our country's history, but into how we remember it, including through the work of the dramatic interpreters that are the museum's main attraction. By 1926, W.A.R. Goodwin, and Reverend with a single mission, has convinced the financier and philanthropist John D. Rockefeller Jr. to underwrite the transformation of the quiet southern town, which has lost its political significance when the capital moved to Richmond in 1780, into a museum. His ambition was mostly architectural. Let the bricks do the talking by preserving the original buildings. But as soon as the furnishings and artifacts began to fill those spaces, Goodwin and Rockefeller felt like something was missing. They realized they had to have some way to communicate what that stuff was, said Neil Hurst, one of the curators of the new exhibition. The exhibition introduces Williamsburg's first interpreters, mostly older white women who, as costumed hostess, were tasked with guiding visitors. Like walking museum plaques, they guided through rooms in silk brocade gowns, pantiers extending their hips to improbable widths, dispensing facts about furnishings. They were really more object based, Katie McKinney, one of the exhibit's curators, said. At the same time, another kind of interpretation was taking shape behind the scenes. In those early years, black men in livery, many descended from families once enslaved in the area, steered horse carriages down the main thoroughfare. Program the program was started to bring these hostesses to work so that they wouldn't show up in cars, McKinney said. But quickly the coachmen took on the role of unofficial docents, recounting a much less buttoned up version of Williamsburg history to the visiting public. As Martin Alonzo Gear, a former supervisor of the site's African American History Initiative, said, if you wanted to understand who actually lived here, how the town functioned, you took a carriage ride. Since those early days, the interpretation program has grown into something far more ambitious and multifaceted. The white women in bonnets still make appearances, but so do performers like Stephen Seals, who portrays uh, James Armstead Lafayette, an enslaved Virginian turned revolutionary spy. The bar for interpreters who perform throughout the day around the village remains high. Smith spent 6 months in the archives before he was even allowed to consider sporting a powdered wig, which he must less address the public with. Shed your too cool for school attitude, embrace the weirdness, and Colonial Williamsburg can be spellbinding in a way a regular old museum can't. Seals recalled one production that led to two audience members overtaken by the scene, shoving actors portraying slave owners. That was scary, he said, but it also showed the power of when you truly end up connecting people to their work. Occasionally, experiments fail, like when the team tried piping in a less than convincing recording of a rooster over loudspeakers. The jarring sound ended up startling visitors out of the experience rather than drawing them in. As Bill Barker, who portrayed Jefferson for 26 years before Smith, put it, interpretive misfires aren't failures so much as a proof of concept, reminders that Colonial Williamsburg, like the nation itself, is a work in progress. You are listening to the reading of articles and features from Off Duty from the Wall Street Journal on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. From the Life and Style page, the new restaurant where you can bid on masterpieces from the table. Confit duck legs, soul marinara, blue chip artwork are all the menu at Marcel's in Sotheby's Bureau Building by Lane Florsheim. To own a restaurant and design it in the most cinematic thing you can do, says Robin Elch, perched near the host's stand at her second restaurant, Marcel, located in Sotheby's Borough Building and opening April 16th. For months, Robin and her husband, Stephen Ouch, who own the design firm Roman and Williams, have been imagining diners descending the building's famous brutalist staircase and entering the warmly lit restaurant, blocking their movements like a scene in a movie. What should the opening shot be? For many, the restaurant's biggest draw will be the rotating masterpieces on its walls, a mixture of often offerings from upcoming Sotheby's sales and art on loan to the auction house. Guests will eat confit duck legs and sole mariniere beneath works like The King of Spades, a large abstract painting by Joan Mitchell on loan from a private collection that it acquired for nearly $3 million from Sotheby's in 2004. Art by Andy Warhol, Alexander Calder, Henri Matisse, and John Chamberlain is displayed in Gauguin glass cases, all available to purchase through auction or private sale in the 6 or 7 figure range or price available upon request. Peeking out from under the staircase is a Lalane sheep sculpture set to be auctioned in June with the estimated of $200,000 to $300,000. Last November, the auction house moved into the building, which was designed by the architect Marcel Bouet in the mid 1960s and sits on Madison Avenue and 75th Street. Robin describes the new restaurant as a glamorous clubhouse open to everyone. The Elches, who also own the downtown New York restaurant La Micherie and designed the Boom Boom Room Club at the top of the Standard Hotel in the Meatpacking District, said they felt as if they were in conversation with Brer as they brought the restaurant to life. To be in this kitchen and this restaurant feels like a tribute to the heart, says Stephen. They use bronze, stone, and wood, Brier's materials of choice for the building throughout the space. His influence can also be seen in the menu. Its fonts, a mixture of cursive and mid-century typeface, were inspired by his business card. The restaurant fittingly bears his name. The 104-seat restaurant has walnut paneled walls, booth upholstery in a dusty cocoa mohair, and a jewel box bar topped with original metal lamps designed by Briere. There are virtuins throughout filled with fine jewelry, asteroid chunks, and a T Rex tooth. Some of them have drink rails where a martini can rest beside artifacts that's hundreds of millions of years old. Sotheby's CEO Charles F. Stewart says that its collectors want engagement, want to be together, want elevated experiences. At Marcel, they will be able to purchase some of the wine from private collections offered at auction. On auction nights, they can even bid from their tables, using iPads to follow the sales and special phones delivered on trays to place their offers. Robin was inspired by a story she says the late Hollywood producer Robert Evans told her when she was 21 about red phones being brought to the table at a Los Angeles restaurant. She selected the same fire engine shade for the ones at Marcel. I was like, okay, we have to do this. Imagine that table wins. Talk about the celebration. Since Sotheby's opened in the Brewer building, Stewart said the auction house has been nearly tripled the number of visitors to its exhibitions than its former location on York Avenue. We had lines around the block every day for the opening exhibitions in November, says Stewart. Stewart said he sees Marcel as both a neighborhood and a destination restaurant. The Upper East Side is having the great movement, he said. It's become vibrant, younger, and so we were thinking about what kind of place would really serve a community. The menu features classic French dishes like escargot and filet bœuf, as well as chicken paprikash, a recipe that Breyer's mother once made him. Most indulgent is the sections of the dessert menu, with giant treats like Le Grands, like Le Dôme, a coconut sorbet, and strawberry ice cream cake for 3 to 4 people. Chef Marie Rose oversees both Marcel and La Mercerie. Music supervisor Randall Poster, Wes Anderson's longtime collaborator, made multiple playlists for the restaurant, imagined as a score. She likes, well, you don't play the same music on a Monday night that you would play on a Friday night, says Robin. Curating the first rotation of artwork in collaboration with Sotheby's Specials, Robin and Stephen focused on pieces made in the 1960s by American artists, inspired by the Whitney Museum of American Art's first show in the building in 1966. The museum, which originally opened in Greenwich Village in 1931, was housed in the Breyer from 1966 until 2014, after which the building was home to the Metropolitan Museum of Art's modern and contemporary collection, and then the Flick collection while its building underwent renovations. The finishing touch is a velvet walled private dining room that's means to feel like stepping into a home. Robin said that collectors who book it can hang their artwork in it ahead of the auction. Sometimes people want a private place for a dinner to be with their pictures before they sell them, she said. Corrections and amplifications. There is a T Rex tooth on display at the Marcel. An earlier version of this article incorrectly said it was a brontosaurus tooth. Here's an article from the food and drink page. When every bar is a speakeasy, what actually is a speakeasy? Long after Prohibition, a few high-end cocktail bars shows it's still possible to retain their speakeasy forebears air of mystery and adventure. And this is by Mark Elwood. Just off a busy sidewalk in Midtown Manhattan, a red carpet leads to a freight elevator. You might not even notice it unless you saw the red light shining on the sidewalk above a pair of nondescript black doors. Nearby, a discreet, retro inflected brass plaque reads Highball Limited. Step in and ride to the 11th floor, and the confusion clears. The brand new 65-person cocktail bar is the brainchild of celebrated bartender Jeff Bell, known for his work at the pioneering Please Don't Tell, or PDT, in New York's East Village. When Bell was given the task of turning the tiny, nondescript room in Midtown into a buzzy destination, he immediately thought speakeasy. People love when they've discovered a place, when it's a journey to get to, he said. But a century after the term first emerged to describe the clandestine drinking dens of Prohibition, its meaning was blurred. When passwords are posted to Instagram and tables booked on an app, what is a speakeasy, and can it be anything more than a gimmick? A few places around the world offer some clues. Be in the know. In the 1920s, at the height of Prohibition, speakeasies were far from elitist, according to Charlotte Voisey, who runs the New Orleans-based hospitality nonprofit Tales of the Cocktail. They didn't care who was there as long as they could keep selling liquor and having a good time. The 1990s cocktail revival introduced a layer of snobbery to the speakeasy style bars, long after any subterfuge was necessary. New spots were intended to cater to in the know drinkers of a different kind. It was about dedication to culture, not just speakeasy mechanisms, Boise said. In other words, picky bartenders wanted to ensure their clientele consisted of drinkers prime to appreciate their efforts. The epitome of this approach was New York's Mill and Honey, which the late Sasha Pretrick opened on the eve of the millennium in 1999 behind a facade that resembled a tailor's shop. Another similarly crafted focus operation, Attaboy, still occupies the site. Long before likes and shares, there wasn't a door policy exactly, but you could be subject to an unspoken discreet screening at the host table. Reservations only and not so grand entrance. The arrival of social media forced operators to reimagine the word of mouth approach. Today, the places that call themselves speakeasy are about intentionality. Instead of texting the bartender, as you might have done 20 years ago, you're expected to plan ahead enough to book a two-stop on Reze. That doesn't mean there isn't room for a little mystery. Famously, PDT is accessed via a phone booth which sits in the brightly lit Cliff Dog's fast food joint next door. Bell said the decision to create an alternative entrance was driven more by practicalities than theoreticals. By being attached to Cliff Dogs, PDT could piggyback on the restaurant's liquor license. But ask anyone who has been, and they're likely to lead with the thrill of picking up the receiver in the phone booth. This theoretically has become another earmark of the speakeasy genre. Raised by Wolves in San Diego sits behind the liquor store accessed via a rotating seating area. The award winning in Buenos Aires, which expanded to Washington, D.C. last fall, sits beneath a working florist accessed via a staircase concealed by a fridge. By giving you permission to escape your day because you're walking through a literal or physical portal, says David Kaplan, co-owner of New York's Death and Company, where bow tie clad bartenders serve elaborate cocktails behind a barely marked door. A space for phonelessness, with the understanding that nothing dispels an air of mystery like a hashtag. A number of modern speakeasy successors have clamped down on social media posts or even phone use altogether. Talani So, part of the team behind Raised by Wolves, has opened a members only drinking spot called the Reading Club. Its rules preclude anyone from taking snaps inside. If you post something on Instagram and we catch you, you will lose your privileges, he says. Others go even further in reviving a reliance on word of mouth. At the Oric Room 1915 in Montana, guests are required to dump their devices into an old nail box at the hostess stand. Anyone anxious about staying connected can give the babysitters the bar's phone number, says co-owner Jason Libor. This is how it used to be when you went to a bar back in the day. You couldn't hide in your phone, but you had to talk to the person next to you. You've been listening to the reading of articles and features from Saturday, Sunday, April 18th, 19th issue of Off Duty from the Wall Street Journal. We read from Off Duty every Saturday at 6 p.m. Your reader has been Patricia Mary. Thank you for listening. God bless and be safe out there.
Coming up next in the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, we have Harper's Magazine. At 8 o'clock, we have Sports Illustrated. At 9 o'clock, we have The Athletic, a section of the New York Times. Stay with us for these readings and more through the rest of the evening. The following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or have another print disability, which